This, this is Sadia Hasnat, a faculty from Sharon's Public School, is going to discuss about the topic multilingualism in classroom. Multilingualism is good for us. Not only does speaking more than one language keep our brains healthy as we age, but it has multiple benefits for young children too, such as giving them an academic advantage and improving their employment prospects once they leave school. Moreover, multilingualism gives us access to more than one culture and improves our understanding of our own cultures. Multilingualism education makes us smarter. There's no denying it. We thought will give us a whirlwind tour of why, rather than cite in detail the findings of researchers like this one who specialize in the field. We know that as an ECD teacher, we are likely to run off our feet in a semi-permanent way. Letting specialty to toy makers like Miniland lighten your load can be the key to unlocking the benefits of multilingualism classroom. Without overwhelming, we will need to learn a new language ourselves, increase our workload, or ask impossible things of our children. We share what we can expect from a multilingualism atmosphere and how education toys like Miniland, ABC Monster help you invite the magic in. Now let us come to multilingualism classroom foster essential 21st century skills. By learning another language, children begin to understand and master language as a system of representing meaning in the world. Along with creative arts education, a firm grounding in language and literacy gives children the insurance they'll always be able to communicate meaningfully with the world around them. The ability to communicate effectively is considered one of the essential 4C skills necessary for the success in the 21st century and is essential to everyone's psychological health. Miniland's ABC Monster is perfect for facilitating educational games that develop multilingualism literacy in a non-competitive way. Your children are tasked with building words from letters of the Latin alphabet. Each word is described by interpreting a picture from a game card. This means that words can be built, and these pictures prescribed in any language like English that uses the script. Multilingualism children are more emphatic. A classroom that welcomes a multilingual atmosphere is more likely to produce children who understand that to be equal to someone doesn't mean that they have to be the same as them. Multilingualism instruction fosters meaningful diplomacy by growing children's appreciation of different cultures and meaning-making systems. When this instruction is included in the day through fun language games like ABC Monster, this end result of empathy is developed alongside the more directly curriculum-related matter of increasing their literacy. While considered a soft skill, an emphatic attitude will consistently provide access to richer, more diverse social networks which help secure their success and social mobility later in life. Speaking more than one language is better for our brain also. Early bilingual proficiency is positively correlated with intelligence. Speaking more than one language from an early age means that your brain has to work harder in those critical development years and you therefore become smarter. Bi and multilingual children carry this benefit with them for the rest of their lives. With a better understanding of how language functions, bilingual children often grow up to be innovators of language and other meaning-making systems. They are also found to have better attention spans because they had more practice at paying mindful attention to things like choosing which language to use or interpret. This ability to focus their attention can be further developed by learning aids like Miniland's Mindful Kinds Line program, which harness these beginnings and grows each child's ability to practice focused, non-judgmental awareness through a series of mindfulness exercises that easily integrate into your teaching and learning day. Now, multilingualism connects communities. Children who speak multiple languages become better at every language. Overall, for example, a Spanish speaking child will eventually be better at English if allowed to draw on their knowledge of their home language in the classroom. A classroom atmosphere that accepts multiple languages allows for code switching and even encourages active additional language learning, helps ensure that the children remains connected to their home language and community. A game like ABC Monster is a great way to support a second language because it isn't restricted to English. Any words built from the Latin alphabet can be built by feeding the monster, and the group nature of the game means that your class can learn from each other by sharing the words that they know for things across cultural and language divides. Being bilingual gives children a better job prospects. Proficiency is more than one language immediately improves your child's chances of finding work after leaving school. This is true even if you only speak one extra language. They are also likely to play immediately into an occupation and role of highest social status than their monolingual counterparts and immediately draw higher incomes. This is due not only to the fact that speakers of more than one language have more highly developed cognitive skills and therefore perform better general tasks, but also because they have access to a wider job market. By committing to include games such as ABC Monster into your teaching day, you are helping your children attain relevance in the economy they are set to enter. Given the vast benefits available to speakers of multiple languages, many land educational toys are specially designed to support you in creating a multilingualism classroom. Each game or toy is accompanied by a didactic guide that allows for English, Spanish, French, German, Portuguese, or Italian instruction. While we might not make use of all these, it pays to know our possibly some extra possibilities in our back pocket when packed perhaps by a new addition to our class who may value beginning with a friendly hello in their home language. We found out more about how you can support multilingualism education in the classroom by exploring through reading, imagining multilingual schools. Languages in education and globalization have learned much more about how important it is in schools to promote multilingualism as much as possible. In many schools, English is a dominant language that lessons are taught in. When there are pupils in schools who do not speak English as their first language, they can sometimes deal with barriers throughout their education. For example, perhaps not being able to understand what is being taught. This can have a big impact on how much the pupils will again gain out of the lessons. Therefore, there are many ways for schools to promote language learning. Firstly, from what we read it is important that with regards to the language and English, schools have an attitude rather than attitude when it comes to teaching in English and also in pupils' home language as well. This is important because it allows for fairness in class and for the pupils to gain as much out of lessons as possible. In addition, it allows pupils to embrace other cultures through learning from others' languages and creating an inclusive learning community. Following it is also important to create interpersonal spaces within the classroom that support the development of literacy in both English and the home language of each child. This will make all pupils feel comfortable to embrace each other's difficulties in a shared space. This is good because in IB schools it will promote pupils to be internationally minded people through developing skills of appreciation, curiosity, and empathy of each different culture. Lastly, what I read another way of promoting multilingualism in schools is to encourage the use of new technologies to reinforce the development of home language literacies as well as English. These technologies help to give pupils the opportunities to use less dominant languages and plenty of other ones when doing their work to help them complete their best work rather than having to attempt to complete it in a language they are not comfortable in, therefore improving their educational experience, allowing them to achieve their full potential. It is therefore important that schools encourage as much use of other languages and cultures as possible in order to help pupils feel welcome, included, supported, and confident in their learning. No matter where a pupil is from, they all deserve equal chances to do their best in school. And by getting rid of language barriers, it can make all the difference. What does multilingualism mean for classroom teaching, especially in school contexts that equate English language proficiency with academic success? How can teachers harness the benefits of their students' multilingualism while simultaneously helping them to develop the academic language they need to succeed? A team of Australia-based educational researchers had embraced the challenge by working with the British Council to produce a groundbreaking collection of multilingualism classroom activities. These activities are aimed at teachers who work with English as a subject or use English as a medium of instruction in low-resource multilingualism classrooms. The team comprised researchers from the University of South Australia, Griffin and Macquarie universities, all of whom have extensive experience of teaching in culturally and linguistically diverse contexts, including sub-Saharan Africa, Northern Africa, and Southeast Asia. Two team members explain what lies behind the publication. For many years, teachers of English have been told that using students' home languages in English lessons should be avoided at all costs. A growing body of research literature shows that drawing on students' home language and cultural backgrounds in classroom teaching validates their identities and provides a strong foundation for additional language learning. Yet, the reality for many multilingualism students, especially English language learners, have been that their home language are left at the classroom door or regarded as an obstacle to the development of the language of schooling and learning in general. For many years, teachers of English have been told that using students' home languages in English lessons should be avoided at all cost. Now come to language as a resource. Multilingualism classrooms are a growing phenomenon around the world. As a result of rapid increase in global mobility and migration, within these classrooms, students may have different linguistic and cultural backgrounds, may speak one language at home and another language at school, or being learning the language of instruction as an additional language. International agencies such as UNICEF, UNESCO, and the European Commission contend that multilingualism education can play a significant role in engaging diverse learners, as well as supporting academic success, classrooms, and promote multilingualism can foster positive identities associated with their home cultures. This position is supported by Richard Root's notion of language as a resource, which advocates for the use of students' home languages as resources for learning and teaching, In practice, a language as a resource perspective implies that teachers should use students' home languages as a tool for thinking and communication while simultaneously learning and developing proficiency in the language of instruction. Nevertheless, English still overwhelming dominates lessons in many classrooms throughout the world, where students read, write, listen, and speak only in English, despite considerable research pointing to the importance and benefits of incorporating multilingualism pedagogies in classroom practice. There are few materials available to educators that explain how this can be done deliberately and systematically in learning planning and lesson delivery. Now come to signs of change. Happily, in recent years, publications, conferences, and professional development materials have advanced thinking about the medium of instruction and ways to approach teaching that challenge the national official language-only view. Now, using the multilingualism approaches, moving from theory to practice. A new British Council publication using multilingualism approaches moving from theory to practice reflects the growing body of research evidence showing that preventing learners from using their home languages in the English language classroom not only impedes learning and denies their linguistic human rights, but also loses valuable opportunities for teachers to draw on their students' knowledge and experience as resources for teaching. This collection of activities was developed in response to the British Council's conscious decision to promote lingualism approaches to teaching English internationally. The activities are designed to acknowledge learners' home languages and cultures when teaching English as an additional or foreign language or using English as the medium of instruction. In multilingualism classrooms, the activities are grounded in research-based pedagogic principles briefly outlined below. Now, funds of knowledge in the language classroom. It has long been recognized that one of the key characteristics of high-quality teaching is the ability of teachers to engage students' prior understandings and experiences and background knowledge. Their prior knowledge is encoded in their home languages, and therefore it is vital that teachers facilitate the transfer of both concepts and skill from students' home languages to English. This view of language is complemented by Lewis' notion of funds of knowledge, which refers to the rich bodies of cultural knowledge that exist within students, households, and communities. More argues that when teachers tap into the type of knowledge by building relationships with their students and the wider social networks, they allow for meaningful learning opportunities. Teaching practices that tap into multilingualism ways of reading, writing, and speaking allow students to assess the cultural resources that enhance their personal significance of the classroom work, as well as expanding access to knowledge through text in more than one language. Purposeful translanguaging. One of the most successful approaches to bilingual teaching and learning has been the purposeful and simultaneous use of two languages in the same classroom, a process that is transferred to as translanguaging. The activities in this collection break new ground in being designed to enable teachers to constantly draw on and make use of students' emergent bilingual skills. The activities are designed in a planned and purposeful way to encourage students draw on the most appropriate linguistic resources they have, allowing teachers to design intercultural and inclusive lessons that support English language learning, but also draw on learners' first languages and their community and family funds of knowledge. The activities were workshopped with and policy by teachers in India who applied them to their own classrooms and provided rich feedback and valuable ideas. This explains more about the process and rationale behind the resource. Project leader, Associate Professor Kathleen Hughes sums up the social significance of the project in her observation that forbidding a child to use her language is a violation of their rights and deeply problematic for their future. We cannot afford to have students marginalized, feeling lost, and falling out of school system. Using students' home languages, bringing in their own knowledge systems to the classroom should be the most important aspect of any school language policy. It is estimated that more than half of the world's population use two or more languages in their everyday lives, and there exists a large body of research lighting that benefits of multilingualism. However, in many classrooms today, the use of languages other than the medium of instruction is still a hot potato. Even schools in countries that are generally considered to be multilingualism often have the language policies insisting on the use of one language of instruction only. But what are some of the reasons behind reservations towards multilingualism in a classroom, such as students using their home language? And more importantly, why and how can multilingualism be engaged in the classroom? Skepticism of multilingualism still exists today and can be traced back to the first half of the 20th century. During this time, research exploring the effects of multilingualism in children proliferated negative beliefs such as condition led to emotional instability and confusion, cognitive delay, and in some cases even schizophrenia. For an overview of such claims, multilingualism language practices, whereby speakers use and mix different languages in conversation, were seen as a sign of poor language skills and laziness. Today, these studies are considered to have been poorly designed and ill-founded, as more recent research has provided robust evidence that debunks such claims. New findings have provided great insight into how multilingualism works and highlights its many benefits. One of the major findings is that languages, contrary to popular belief, are not stored separately in the brain. Instead, one integrated and interactive language system is host to all of the languages that a speaker knows. When speaking, all of the languages are simultaneously active. Understanding how multilingualism functions highlights why it can be detrimental to insist on the use of one language only in the classroom. Underlying such policies and the practices is frequently a view of students' home languages as obstacles to the acquisition of the language of instruction, especially in cases where the home language is a minority language. However, discouraging multilingualism in the classroom by extending home languages means that students will block out part of the linguistic resources that would otherwise be available to them. This practice can impact on classroom engagement as knowledge acquired in the home language may not be assessed and students may hold back from emerging in classroom discussions if they are not able to transfer such knowledge into the language of instruction. It can also have negative ramifications for students' social and emotional development as a part of their cultural identity is not acknowledged. Supporting multilingualism is the classroom can be valuable pedagogical practice with positive effects on students' academic performance as well as social and emotional well-being, whether in a passive way by allowing students to use their home language or a more active way by implementing teaching and learning practices that draw on more than one language. It is important to view all students' languages as resources rather than unwanted baggage on the way to language of instruction only. Small pedagogical practices such as showing interest in and valuing students' linguistic and cultural resources can have many positive effects. Encouraging students to use their home language to support group work, for example, means that students will be able to use already existing knowledge that would have remained invisible otherwise. Such practices can provide inclusive opportunities for deep learning and effective scaffolding towards building knowledge and developing language proficiencies. To sum up, valuing students' linguistic and cultural backgrounds and encouraging the use of their languages in the classroom are valuable teaching and pedagogical practices. It can boost students' confidence, help achieve learning goals, enhance academic performance, and contribute to greater awareness of other languages and cultures in the wider community by celebrating diversity and inclusion. This is the age of bilingual is better and earlier is best, and more parents are choosing schools for their children with the express goal for developing bilingualism. But how do we know if a particular school or program is right for a particular child? We do not know the children with a wide variety of challenges can become successfully bilingual, and that there is no clear reason to exclude any particular child from EMI because of learning challenges. That said, we need to be sure that the school we choose will provide adequate provisions for children who need extra support in acquiring the school language. Putting the child in an English medium school that will not provide support is putting them at risk of not fully acquiring English and not developing in a content areas as consequence. An equally important issue is how well the home language will be supported. The research that we draw understand the impact of students acquiring a new language through school is clear on one main point: the importance of maintaining and developing the students. This is particularly true for children who may struggle academically, as they will need their own language to assess a variety of alternative or post-school options. In some cases where a child is clearly not going to get the support they need to fully develop in English, a school in their own language may be preferable. Languages can be added later on in other ways, but losing out on years of learning is very hard to make up. Very often, parents try to use English at home to help their children learn the school language very more quickly. This is not always detrimental, but needs to be balanced with the continued development of the home language. Given the strong relationship between ability in the home language and development in English, parents' first job is always to support home language growth. This should be made explicit in school documentation and parents' meeting. If the home language is well supported outside school and the parents are determined to use English at home, a clear structure and goals will make them more successful rather than defaulting to English all the time. Providing well-defined activities to be done in English will guide parental support. One thing schools can do is send home conversation starters for families to use over the dinner table. This will help develop social English in particular. Teachers can also send homework books and games that parents can use to support English development. It should always be clear that the use of English should be restricted to the school activity and the rest of the time should continue in the home language. Parents who overuse English in the home will often end up with children with no longer want to use their home language, which is detrimental to their social, emotional and academic development. Supporting multilingualism in a monolingual school. Tensions often arise when us teachers become convinced of the value of students in education but work in schools with the only ethos. There are no easy answers for this dilemma, but there are steps teachers can make to improve the situation for their multilingual learners. The first is to share information with the greater school community. There are a variety of accessible, easy to digest resources that are based on current research that have a very clear message regarding the role of the English medium education. Sharing these resources with English school leadership and other teachers can provide openings for small conversations which can eventually lead to change in approach. A second approach is to become a quiet champion of home languages, even if you are not allowed to have your students use their own languages in the classroom. A sad situation, but sometimes reality. You can purposely acknowledge the multilingualism nature of your class and talk to your students about the languages, making a point of knowing what other languages your students speak and have positive conversations about their multilingualism will support the status of their other languages and instill pride in being multilingualism. You can also do language awareness activities. There are a variety of accessible, easy to digest resources that are based on current research that have a very clear message regarding the role of the English medium education. Sharing these resources with school leadership and other teachers can provide openings for small conversations which can eventually lead to change in approach. A second approach is to become quite champion of home languages, even if you are not allowed to have your students use their own languages in the classroom. A bad situation, but sometimes reality, you can purposely acknowledge the multilingualism nature of your class and talk to the students about their languages, making a point of knowing what other languages your students speak and having positive conversations about their multilingualism or bilingualism will support the status of other languages and instill pride in being multilingualism. You can also do language awareness activities in class, helping your students think about how their own language are similar or different from English in how they work and use this awareness to build their understanding of English. A final approach is to be very clear with parents about the value of their own language and the necessity to keep developing outside school. If the school isn't doing anything to promote home language development, the parents must be talking this on, of their children risk losing their own language in the pursuit of English. Teaching a language or content in a multilingual classroom or any type of learning environment such as tele-collaboration or distance learning is becoming the norm, as well as a challenge faced by more and more teachers. But it is also an asset as learners have opportunities to communicate with peers of different origins, cultures and backgrounds, and thus developing tolerance and respect for others. To maximize the benefits of these opportunities while minimizing the potential threats, here are a few tips to to consider. Take each learner as he Take each learner as he, she is as unique, complex, and multifaceted individual who brings their knowledge, skills, and cultural understandings to the learning situation. A one-size-fits-all approach is likely to prove ineffective in a multilingualism environment. Number 2, as a teacher, always be kind and supportive and learn why you should be. 3. Value and use all the languages of each learner in the classroom equally. No language should be ruled out. 4th, purpose clear and realistic learning goals and ensure that learners understand them. To that effect, use the language resources available. Adapt the work to the needs which emerge as the project moves forward instead of following a predefined sequence. However, never lose sight of the individual goal. It can be reached in many different ways. 5th, adapt the work to the needs which emerge as the project moves forward instead of following a predefined sequence. However, never lose sight of the initial goal. It can be reached in many different ways. 6th, purpose meaningful tasks that are connected to the world outside school. By doing so, the learners will get involved in the activities, which in turn will be fostering learning. 7th, arrange for the learners to communicate and interact in the target language with people from other countries as a meaningful way to use and practice the language they need for their schooling. 8th, identify all the tools that can be made available to students to help them become independent language learners and users. A teacher does not have all the solutions, but learners can be resourceful and incredibly helpful when trusted. Resources can be available in the learner's original language and connected to their culture. 9th, encourage peer collaborations and interaction. Interaction helps students make meaning and learners. Explanations are often more understandable to their peers than the teachers. 10th, work to foster learner creativity and engagement by providing stimulating learning environments. The ability to speak multiple languages is a coveted skill in today's economy. The goal is to create a learning environment that promotes language acquisition while making the curriculum accessible to everyone. For policy makers, the educators worldwide, the question is how to foster the environment in an era of tight budgets, diverse priorities, and political sensitivities. Schools that truly embrace multilingualism report higher levels of community engagement and academic achievement across the board. If implemented poorly, through such programs can further marginalize groups that aren't proficient in the dominant language. To stimulate fresh thinking of this critical topic, the International Literacy Association recently convened a roundtable with a distinguished group of advocacy and policy experts in Washington, D.C. In a wide-ranging conversation led by award-winning journalist Dane Brady, experts shared their thinking on the best practices and priorities for achieving true multilingual learning. In a 3-part blog series, we'll explore the key takeaway from the conversations. Parents have long recognized the importance of English as the language of global business, but as the world becomes more interconnected and emerging economies gain strength, it is clear that multilingualism is prerequisite for success. In the US and beyond, dual language programs are oversubscribed, noted Areas Vice President and Chief Development Officer for the Center for Applied Linguistics. Parents are recognizing the importance of their children being bilingual or multilingual. the economic benefits of that for the kids. Multilingualism is going to be the differentiator, said Mariana Haynes, Senior Fellow Alliance for Excellent Education, adding that students understand the value of having those skills on their resume. Deputy Secretary Mohammad Amdel Kader, the International Foreign Language Education Officer of the US Department of Education's Office of Post-Secondary Education, suggested engaging the business community to stress the importance of language learning. I think that's incredibly important because as a business community articulates the need of at that least basic understanding of language and some of the cultural nuisances parents are thinking about their kids. When they graduate college, those kids need to have a job. Multilingualism is not a partisan issue. Amdel Kader said, "This is the right thing to do for our kids. It is the right thing to do for our business. It is the right thing to do for our communities. The kids need these skills to be able to communicate." At the simplest level, Area said, "We need leadership at all different levels in order to encourage growth and understanding of all the importance of multilingualism. We need to value multilingualism and have a clear way to do that. We need to dispel the myths surrounding bilingualism, primarily that learning 2 or even 3 languages as a child brings confusion and lowers academic achievement." Marty Abbott, Executive Director of the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages, added, "We have research that proves the opposite. Within the education community, we need to equip educators with the resources and tools they need to embrace and encourage multilingualism," noted Hector Montenegro, Associate Margarita. Educators need additional resource and information about how best to work collaborative, that we have to a more accepting and welcoming environment, school and classroom, where teachers can teach effectively. Haynes noted that fragmented leader and teacher development should be addressed in order to create structures for language learning. Leaders play a huge role in setting the tone. If teachers work in isolation, it is impossible to make this happen. You have a lot of district policies that are very much at odds with the kinds of things that you must to have happening within schools. We all need to take step outside our schools themselves and consider how governments can support and foster culture multilingualism. Abbott suggested and continued to build champions in Congress to push forward research on the importance of languages. Hopefully, we have an impact working together. Leslie Engley Young, Director of Impact for Pencils of Promise, added policy considerations should take into account the best practices and proven strategies that already exist around multilingualism learning. It is getting the case studies, bringing the evidence forward and showing evidence from abroad. We should be cross-learning with evidence from across the board. Stages of the MLE program. A widespread understanding of MLE programs suggests that instructions take place in the following stages. Stage 1. Learning takes place entirely in the child's home language. Stage 2. Building fluency in the mother tongue, introduction of oral L2. Stage 3. Building oral frequency in L2, introduction of literacy in L2. Stage 4. Using both L1 and L2 for lifelong learning. MLE proponents stress that the second language acquisition component is seen as a two-way bride, such that learners gain the ability to move back and forth behind their mother tongue and the other language rather than simply a transitional literacy program where reading through the mother language is abandoned at some stage in the education. Based on the theories of multilingual education that are spelled out here, Andhra Pradesh and Orissa have adopted a thematic approach to multilingual education. Using a seasonal calendar within a relevant cultural context has provided a space to the tribal children of the Orissa and Andhra Pradesh to rediscover their culture through their language. The multilingual education in this approach emphasizes first language first in the child, taking the socio-cultural curriculum in the classroom culture and the bride to second language, in addition to the basic theory of Paulo Freire on critical pedagogy, Gramscian theory on multilingual education. The unique thing in this approach is to involve the community in creating their own curriculum and minimize the theoretical hegemony, thereby creating a new set of people who believe in the ethics of creating and sharing knowledge for the society than to limit it to the theoreticians. Multilingual education in Orissa. Orissa is a multilingual state, having more than 40 ethnic languages among the 62 scheduled tribes, along with the modern Indian languages like Hindi, Bengali, and Telugu. To address the language education of ethnic minorities, children in schools, the Odisha government started multilingual education program, 10 tribal languages, led by Mr. Dr. Mahendra Kumar Mishra as the Director of Multilingual Education and guided by Professor D.P. Patnaik and Professor Kushwar Mahapatra, the eminent mental experts. The state government started MLE program in the tribal languages in 547 schools. 10 tribal languages were adopted. These are Santani, Sura, Kui, Kuvis, Koya, Kishan, Oram, Juang, Bonga, and Ho. Culturally response curriculum and textbooks were prepared from class 1 to 5 to maintain mother tongue based multilingual education to educate the tribal children. The state government appointed teachers from the same language community in the schools to teach the tribal children. Language policy was also formulated. The program was also supported by Summer Institute of Linguistics led by Mr. Steven Simpson and Vicky Ghosh, Pamela Maxey. The curriculum and textbooks were prepared by the tribal teachers guided by the MLE resource groups. It was initiated in 2005 and is now running in 2,250 schools with majority tribal children. This is a sustained MLE program in South Asian countries. About 7 Asian countries have visited the MLE schools. Multilingualism education in developed countries. Scholars and educators have argued that embracing their diverse linguistic knowledge that immigrant students bring to the developed countries such as United States and using students' first language to help them learn English may be inexpensive and ineffective way to integrate and socialize immigrant youth. Allowing code switching in schools with high English learner populations can increase the potential from enhanced English learning and academic performance. Code switching between multilingual classroom children can create an informal peer mentorship structure that embraces immigrant children's linguistic capabilities to drive learning, create a strong peer network, and enhance the development of English as a second language for immigrant students in the multi-ethnic schools. While much research has focused on how Western schools contain or silence the increasing multilingualism of their pupils, this paper investigates how a Dutch medium school in Brussels, has decided to take a different approach by branding itself as a multilingual. Based on socio-linguistic ethnographic fieldwork, it will show the teacher invested in a multilingual school policy and how they recruited and follows and allowed pupils to speak other languages for didactical purposes as well as more informational conversations. Nevertheless, as its curriculum remained predominantly Dutch medium, the school was cited for contradictory behavior. Teachers problematized pupils' flexible language practices and limited proficiency in Dutch and restricted their use of other languages, other languages of concern with pupils' acquisition of Dutch access to curriculum, language, knowledge, and future educational and professional success. So, despite the school's attempts to transcend the struggles that arise in the schools which are more averse to multilingualism, similar tensions emerge in this setting as teachers need to find a balance between their pedagogical goals and concerns about monolingualism in the wider society. A multilingual education makes you smarter, there's no denying it. We thought we'll give you a whirlwind tour of why, rather than cite in detail the findings of researchers like this one who specialize in the field. By learning another language, children begin to understand and master language as a system of representing meaning in the world. Along with creative arts education, a firm grounding in language and literacy, children the assurance that they'll always be able to communicate meaningfully with the world around them. The ability to communicate effectively is considered one of the essential skills necessary for success in the 21st century and is essential to everyone's psychological health. A classroom that welcomes a multilingual atmosphere is likely to produce children who understand that the equal is someone doesn't mean that have to be the same. Multilingual instructions foster meaningful diplomacy by growing children appreciation of different cultures and meaning-making systems. When this instruction is included in their way through fun languages, this end result of empathy is developed alongside the more directly curriculum related matter of increasing their literacy. While considered a soft skill, an empathic attitude will consistently provide access to richer, more diverse social networks and social help secure their success and social mobility later in life. Early bilingual proficiency is positively correlated with intelligence. Speaking more than one language from an early age means that your brain has to work harder in those critical development years and you therefore become smarter. Bi and multilingual children carry this benefit with them for the rest of their lives with a better understanding of how language functions. Bilingual children often grow up to be innovators of language and other meaning systems. They are also found to have better attention spans because they have had more practices at paying mindful attention to things like choosing which language to use or interpret. This ability to focus their attention can further develop by learning aids like Miniland's Mindful Kings program. Children who speak multiple languages become better at every language overall. For example, a Spanish speaking children will eventually be better in English if followed to draw an attention, allows for code switching, and even encourages the active additional language learning, helps ensure the children remains connected to their home language and communication. Proficiency is more than one language immediately improves your child's chances of finding work after leaving school. This is true even if you only speak one extra language. They are also likely to place immediately into an occupation and role of higher social status than their monolingual counterparts and immediately draw higher incomes. This is due not only to the fact that the speakers of more than one language have more highly developed cognitive skills and therefore perform better a general task, but also because they have access to a wider job market. By committing to including games such as ABC Monster into the teaching day. Given the vast benefits available to speakers of multiple languages, Miniland educational toys are specially designed to support you in creating a multilingualism classroom. Each game or toy is accompanied by a didactic guide that allows for English, Spanish, French, German, Portuguese or Italian instructions. Through reading, Imagining Multilingualism Schools, Languages in Education and Globalization have heard much more about how important it is in schools to promote multilingualism as well as possible. In many schools, English is the dominant language that lessons are taught in. When there are pupils in schools who do not speak English as their first language, they can sometimes deal with barriers throughout their education. For example, perhaps not being able to understand what is being taught. This can have a big impact on how well the pupils will gain out of their lessons. Therefore, there are many ways for schools to promote language learning. Firstly, from what I read, is important that will regard to the home language and English. Schools have both an attitude rather than either attitude when it comes to teaching in English and also in pupils' home language as well. This is the most important because it allows for the fairness in class and for the pupils to gain as much out of lessons as possible. In addition, it allows pupils to embrace other cultures through learning from other languages as creating an inclusive learning community. Following is an important to create interpersonal spaces within the classroom that supports the development of literacy in both English and home language of each child. This will make all pupils feel comfortable to embrace each other's differences in a shared space. This is because in IB schools, it promotes pupils to be immediately money-minded through developing skills of appreciation, curiosity and empathy of each different culture. Lastly, from what I read, another way of promoting multilingualism in schools is to encourage the use of new technologies. At last, I would like to conclude my views by saying that multilingual classrooms are a growing phenomenon around the world as a result of rapid increases in global mobility and migration. Within these classrooms, students may have different linguistic and cultural backgrounds, may speak one language at home and another language at school, or by learning the language of instruction as an additional language. International agencies, UNESCO and the European Commission contend that multilingualism education can play a significant role in engaging diverse learners as well as supporting academic success classrooms that promote multilingualism and foster positive identities associated with their home cultures. This position is supported by advocates for the use of students' home languages as a resource for learning and teaching. A language as a resource perspective implies that a teacher should use student home languages as a tool for thinking and communication while simultaneously learning and developing proficiency in the language of instruction. Nevertheless, English still overwhelmingly dominates lessons in many classrooms throughout the world where students read, write, listen, and speak only in English. Despite considerable research pointing to the importance and benefits of incorporating multilingualism pedagogies in classroom practice, there are few materials available to educators that explain how this can be done deliberately and systematically in the lesson planning and lesson delivery. A new British Council using multilingual approaches, moving from theory to practice, reflects the growing body of research evidence showing that preventing learners as well as the using the home language in the English language classrooms not only impedes learning and denies the linguistic human rights, but also loses valuable opportunities for the teachers to draw on the students' knowledge and experience as a resource for teaching. This collection of activities was developed in response to the British Council's conscious decision to promote multilingualism approaches to teaching English intentionally. The activities are designed to acknowledge learners and culture when teaching English as an additional or foreign language. Thank you very much. These are the views about the multilingualism in classroom.